With Pokemon Legends EA coming out soon and the return of Mega Evolutions, it's natural to start thinking about what Pokemon could get a brand new Mega Evolution. And one of the more exciting concepts to consider is the possibility that we could get a Mega Evolution for one of the missing pseudo-legendary Pokemon. So far there are 11 pseudo-legendary Pokemon, and 4 of them have a Mega Evolution. These 4, of course, are Tyranitar, Garchomp, Metagross, and Salamence.
No, Patrick, Aggron is not a pseudo-legendary Pokemon.
So that means that there are 7 remaining pseudo-legendary Pokemon that could be interesting candidates for a new Mega Evolution. This is counting Hisuian and Goodra, which I'll touch on a little bit more later. In this video, I will design a new Mega Evolution for each of these pseudo-legendary Pokemon, starting with Gen 1's Dragonite and ending with Gen 9's Baxcalibur. It's logical to start at Gen 1. I have seen more than one person suggest that Dragonite would make more sense if it kept the snake-like appearance of its previous evolutions. But there might actually be a good reason that Dragonite made this dramatic change. Dragonair is likely based on something called the Amugi, a semi-dragon that resembles a snake. After this creature lives 1,000 years, a jewel falls from the sky, that's the pearl you see on Dragonair's neck, and if the Amugi catches it, it becomes a true dragon. That being said, this video is just for fun, and sometimes it's a little bit boring when Mega Evolutions just grow some spikes or something. So I wanted this to be very different from the original Dragonite design. But honestly, for some reason, I just wasn't feeling this. So as an added bonus, let's do one more attempt. Dragonite does have higher physical attack compared to its special attack. It also has several punching moves, so maybe a Noodle Dragon wouldn't really make much sense anyway. Here's the final second design. I guess maybe we could keep both of these and consider one Mega Dragonite X and one Mega Dragonite Y. You'll just have to tell me how these would be different from each other. Would they have different types, different abilities? Let me know. Okay, many people have commented on this before, but one of the reasons Dragonite probably didn't get a Mega Evolution in the first place is due to naming conventions of Mega Stones. They all end in "ite," so Dragonite's Mega Stone would be called Dragonite-ite, which is clunky, but honestly, it's probably fine. I'm not totally sure it's a perfect reason to deprive one of the most popular Pokemon of all time a Mega Evolution. Now that we've covered Gen 1, we can move on to the next generation pseudo-legendary Pokemon. Gen 2 is covered with Tyranitar. Gen 3 is covered with Metagross and Salamence.
Nice.
And Gen 4 already has Garchomp. Sorry, I will not be doing X and Y versions of each of these Pokemon. Instead, we can move on to Gen 5, making a Mega Evolution for Hydreigon. As you know, Hydreigon is obviously based on a Hydra. But did you know that its original beta design apparently had a second militaristic inspiration? Hydreigon's original design is based on a Hydra mixed with a tank. That's a little bit on the nose for the first Pokemon region based on America, isn't it, Game Freak? They kept a nod to this design by keeping a subtle tread-like pattern on its stomach. And it could be at least part of the reason why its shiny is a green color. So for Mega Hydreigon, why not bring this idea back? There are several Mega Evolutions that do gain some sort of man-made looking features. I will say, depending what time period Pokemon Legends EA takes place in, this could stick out like a sore thumb. But I could easily see it being set in sometime around World War I, or heck, I could see it even being set in the future. Just not as far in the future as the Paradox version of Hydreigon. Anyway, here's the final design. I gave it an extra large Cobra neck with these blasters, but I'd imagine it could also fire lasers from each of its mouths. Let's move on to Generation 6 with Goodra. Since Mega Evolution started in Gen 6, I am a teeny bit surprised that they didn't give Goodra a Mega Evolution for Pokemon X and Y. And since they gave Goodra a new form in the last Legends game, I'm kinda wondering if they'll just skip it entirely this time around. Which reminds me, Hisuian Goodra does bring up another interesting question here. There's currently only one Pokemon that has both a Mega Evolution and a regional form. Can you think of what it is? It's Slowbro. Regional forms didn't exist when Gen 6 came out, so Game Freak is going to have to grapple with the question of how Mega Stones might work on regional forms. Would Slowbro-ite work on Galarian Slowbro automatically? Or would they have to come out with a new stone called Galarian Slowbro-ite? And these same questions would apply to Goodra. So instead, let's try this. What if both Goodras just got one shared Mega Evolution? For its design, I imagined it having a really long tail that sort of spiraled around into like a conch shell. And of course, it'd have extra slimy features and look a little bit stronger. Here's the final design. It does beg the question, would this automatically have Hisuian Goodra's typing of Dragon and Steel? or something else entirely. Moving on to Gen 7 with Kommo-o. For Mega Kommo-o, I designed it sort of like Mega Swampert, making its arms super big. But for Mega Kommo-o, I gave it bladed plates on each arm, which I think would work really well for its dragon and fighting type. I also made its tail longer and more bladed looking. I wanted it to stand out from its original design, so I gave it this big fluffy mane and made it look more buff. Here's the final design. I think it keeps its dragon and fighting type, but what ability would you give it? Now we move on to Gen 8 with only 2 left to go. Galar had the dragon and ghost type pseudo-legendary Dragapult. Dragapult is based on an extinct amphibian known as Diplocalus? Diplocalus. And not only that, it also is inspired by a B2 Spirit stealth bomber. They're called that because they're designed to be difficult to detect. That's fitting inspiration for a ghost type Pokemon, as ghosts are known for going invisible. So, for its Mega Evolution, why not base it on the fastest stealth bomber in history? This is the SR-71 Blackbird. This aircraft is retired now, but it still holds the record for being the fastest stealth bomber, traveling at speeds of Mach 3.3. In other words, really stinking fast. It even set the record in 1974 for completing the fastest travel time between London and New York. That record involving London could possibly justify this Pokemon being from Galar? I guess? Okay, there was one aspect of this design I really wasn't into. This dragon was looking like one of those long-faced dogs. I just had to move the eyes down lower to make it look like more of a serious dragon. And I'm glad I made this change, because it definitely looks significantly better in my opinion. Anyway, here's the final design. Once again, this probably only makes sense if Legends EA is set in the future. Look, make fun of its goofy head all you want, but you won't be laughing when you see it has 192 base speed, and puts the rest of its points in its attack stats. Finally, we can move on to the last design of this video. A Mega Evolution for Gen 9 pseudo-legendary Baxcalibur. Baxcalibur is based on Godzilla, similar to Tyranitar. Tyranitar's Mega Evolution continues this Godzilla theme, with a design either inspired by Super Godzilla or Space Godzilla. At least, that's what Google says? Now, it could be super fitting to have Baxcalibur's Mega Evolution to also be based on Space Godzilla. I'd simply give it giant ice crystals on its shoulders and call it a day. But instead, let's separate it from Tyranitar and choose a different Godzilla variant to take inspiration from. An ironic yet very powerful choice would be Burning Godzilla. Now, this Godzilla is super heated and glows fiery red, but we could do the opposite for this ice-type Pokemon. Burning Godzilla has these radioactive glowing parts in its design. Excalibur could have that, only glowing icy blue. Maybe think of Freezer Burn or Nuclear Winter. My design was looking a little bit too much like regular Baxcalibur, so I switched up the colors a bit to set it further apart. Here's the final design. I made the sword on its back grow several times its original size, and had a layer of ice crystal eyes over it, making it an even larger blade. So there you have it. Do you think any pseudo-legendary Pokemon will get a new Mega Evolution in Pokemon Legends EA? Or do you think they'll give more Mega Evolutions to Charizard? If so, let me know, and as always, be sure to like and subscribe.